So Simon, welcome to the show, man. You know a little bit about us. We've heard a lot about you, but why don't you tell our listeners, give us a brief introduction of yourself and what you do.
Yeah, so my name is Simon Dobos. I do kind of a little bit of everything here and there. I started my bodybuilding journey almost 5 years ago. But I have a data analytics background as far as like what I do from like an everyday basis. So I've been doing that for a couple of years now. And that's just kind of like all came to fruition when I got into bodybuilding because like I'm always been a really big analytics person and then got into bodybuilding and fitness back in 2020. Recently became a new dad. So
Congratulations,
yeah,
man. Congratulations,
thanks.
brother.
Yeah, it's do any of you guys any
I have a
close?
daughter. I have a daughter, 5 years old.
Okay, so yeah, mine is 9 months old, so daughter as well.
She's so cute, man. She's so
Girl,
cute.
girl, girl dads are the best, man. Hey, when she's
I
gonna have you
know.
wrapped around your finger, I know that's something, you've been told already probably, but hey, we're here for a reason. We're here for a reason to
Yeah.
lead and guide them in the best possible way. Let
Yeah.
let me ask, how do you feel analytics and bodybuilding tied together? And beautiful daughter, by the way. And Alex just
Thank
publicly mentioned.
you. Yeah, I was gonna say that that pic the only thing that's missing from that picture is Daddy's credit card. She's got her glasses and her bag and everything all set up. Um, but no, I think a lot of people that don't know like to the depth of bodybuilding, like there's a lot of data that goes into it. Whether it's like your training, your diet, and especially if you're coaching, like I know your guys' coach G, like you
Coach.
what?
No, I was saying
Coach G.
coach. I was just hyping him up.
Uh yeah, so like a lot of people don't realize like it's not about just like getting lean and like lifting weights. Like there's a lot of troubleshooting. There's collecting data. Everyone responds differently to different protocols. Like not every person, cuts weight the same way. Not everyone reacts to the same, macros and everything like that. So I think like it's kind of lend itself well. Like I worked with a coach for the first 3 years of bodybuilding, and he was really big on like the science aspect. Like he's got a huge coaching business. His niche is bikini. Very well known coach, and he's all about the science and everything like that. So I had a good kind of coach to learn from, and then I kind of wanted to just like learn more for myself. Um, there's guys that are just like, hey, I want to hire a coach and I want to
Take
shut
the
my
thinking
brain
out of it.
off. And
Yeah, take
yeah,
the
yeah,
thinking out.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, for me, it was always like, all right, like, why are we doing this? Like, why are we doing that? And then the more I realized, like, everyone has their own kind of way of looking at coaching. And, some people, they just, regurgitate what their previous coach did and then
With their
try to,
process.
Yeah.
yeah, try to recycle that. So, like, I didn't want to do that. So what ultimately I started doing is like focusing more on um, data. So like I'm really big on using like DEXA scans. I don't know if you guys have ever done a
Yes.
DEXA scan.
Yes.
Yeah. So the first 3 years, I would get one every 3 months.
Mm.
It was almost like overkill, right? But what I started noticing is like I would get a DEXA scan result, and then what I started seeing is like, okay, I grew in like this particular area, but not as much here. So then what I would do is I would just switch up my training program to incorporate,
Mm.
different exercises. So
You can
like
grow the other parts out. Yeah, that's smart.
right, right. So, but with that, like you gotta almost take everything with a grain of salt because like at the end of the day, it's all numbers, right? So like if you're in a push phase and you see that lean body mass going up, well, it's like, all right, great, you're loaded up on, 600, 700 carbs daily and,
The glycogen
ton of
levels.
ton of water and everything like that. So
Yeah.
Your muscles are filled with water as opposed to like, like I just recently got a DEXA scan and I'm like, damn, my lean body mass is going down, but like I'm also completely depleted right now. So it's just, yeah, I like the data side of it. Like what I do for work. So I work for like a med tech company. I've been with them for almost 10 years now. And everything that I do, I'm in like a data analytics operational role. And everything that I do is like you have to have a reasoning behind why you're doing it and you have to have data. So whether it's, process improvement or dealing with, sales incentive planning or anything like that, like you got to have reasons to why you're making decisions. So I started just kind of like incorporating that into bodybuilding. It just kind of helped me kind of just have that kind of perspective on bodybuilding. It just, and even now self-coaching, it's it's tough. It's for sure challenging. But I like rely on a lot of the data because you kind of have to like take your mind out of it, right?
Yeah.
Um, Especially, you get deep in prep and you're like, damn, I
Prep
look
brain.
like crap. Yeah. You don't know what you look like, and everyone at the gym's like, man, you look insane. I'm like, man, I don't know. Like, you start analyzing stuff. So having, that data in the background, I'm like, okay, it kind of checks myself like, all right, I'm doing everything that I'm doing. I'm treating myself like a client. And yeah, like I wouldn't be able to do that if I didn't have, like actual data and making decisions based off that. So
What was really cool is that because Simon and I competed together. It was our first show, Lehigh Valley at up in PA. It was at 2022, right? Um,
yeah,
but you had started your process of bodybuilding way before that. Like I think you said you had pretty much been preparing for 2 years at that point.
yeah.
And you were tracking, I mean, you were tracking your water daily from that far out,
Oh
right?
yeah.
Like so like the level of detail that you've put into it. Has anything what would you say has changed like the way you approach now that you're self-coaching? I know you were working with Dylan Bear, but like what's changed over the past 5 years? It's still data's consistent, right? Or has things been pretty much consistent throughout?
I started really heavily investing in like courses, right? So J3U, I know people are very familiar with that. Like I did
Yes.
level one, level two, I did the APO, um, or AHO, the hypertrophy training.
Yes.
Um, there's just a lot to it, right? So I've kind of taken some of the stuff that I learned from my initial, time working with Dylan, but then it's like taking that and having a different perspective, right? Getting into the science, getting into like away from some of like the bro science, right? And aside from like what has changed, nothing really. I'm like big on not setting goals. I'm big on setting habits. So like I don't look at like when my next show is, right? And so when I got into bodybuilding, Alex, to your point, like I hired a bodybuilding coach and I was like, I don't know when my show is going to be. Like, I know I need to put on size, I need to be competitive, and I don't want to step on stage till, like I can win. So I don't care how long it takes. It ended up taking, 18, 19 months, putting on like some serious weight. Like all my buddies used to make fun of me because I was like, always a skinny kid. Now I'm like shoving stuff down my throat every 5 seconds I get, eating like over 5,000 calories a day.
So
Um,
Shoo,
but
sheesh.
yeah,
yeah.
so
Yeah,
that
That's
was
that's
that's like
analytics for you
10.
guys right there. That's science. Database.
um but that was post pump workout after my first show of the season. So you know how that goes when you're like right out of peak week
yeah.
and then just nicely filled out.
Yes.
Um,
You wish you looked like that on stage.
yeah, I actually was not, dude, I had a rough prep. I was like not in good conditioning that show.
This one right
But I
here.
definitely filled out. Yeah. Yeah,
This
I
was
was probably like 2, 3 weeks behind, which I didn't want to make that same mistake this time around. But yeah, so I'm kind of like I have, 4 years of working with my body, and I know what I respond well to. I know what I don't respond well to. So it's like I said, I've built these habits, not goals. Yeah, that was the day
What did it
after
take?
our
What did it take to finally get that right? The food, because I know there's tests out there, right? I just ordered this microbiome test so they
yeah.
could see what my gut gets irritated to and stuff like that, like food sensitivity. Did you do something like that to
Yeah,
understand your body
so
better?
yeah, so I have. The thing with doing all those tests is like when you're in a bulk, like can you really do an elimination diet when you're eating, 4,000, 5,000 calories? Like that's very hard to do. So I have done those tests and I get back like half the stuff is red, right? So I've done like clean out diets, experimented with different foods, like you know, my national show, that was the first time I had like traveled internationally for a show. And like I was normally doing a lot of like rice base back in the US. And when I went to the UK, like they don't have rice cakes, they have corn cakes, right? So I had this huge influx of corn and I like was just holding on to water, like not sitting stuff well. And then after I took that test, I was like, man, corn is something that I had like a high sensitivity to. So I'm like, shit, I was eating that the entire time through my national show. So yeah, it's super important, but I take that stuff with a grain of salt because like when you're eating something like over and over again and you're eating a lot of it, like you can build up
Tolerance.
yeah. So
But you
so
were, was it like 1,000 grams of carbs the day before
it
Gymshark?
was like 1200. Yeah.
Oh,
That's crazy,
Yeah.
man.
yeah, I remember you.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. You were because
it was
we spoke before. You were like, Alex, like where are all the supermarkets? Like, what do I do? It's all
yeah.
different.
Yeah, it's yeah, it was 1200 by that night. The feedback I got from the Whitney Jones, so I did the week before, it was a quick turnaround time. So I did the weekend before I did the Whitney Jones Classic, and Sandy was the head judge. Her feedback to me was, more detail and a little bit more pop. Like I'm one of those guys that like I can get pretty lean pretty quickly, but filling out is always kind of tougher. So I don't know if it was maybe a little lack of water or whatnot, but yeah, 1,200 carbs the night before, kind of just overspill me the night before and then, come in tighter. But yeah, timing of that show was tough. We were supposed to go on at, I think like 11, 11 or 12, and I didn't go on until 2 because they decided to have Phil Heath and Ryan Terry do like an on-stage interview before Men's Physique came out. So it was like the timing
Ooh,
was hard.
You
that's
said that
tough.
you
Yeah.
said that show is run pretty well though, right? Like,
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of competitors, right? The man, we're bouncing around all over. Yeah, that
so
so as far as layout goes, that show was top notch. I mean, they had like shipping containers with like posing rooms in there. They had like full what is it, primal equipment. Um like full on like gym. Like it was pretty sick. Like it was the coolest experience. The level like of competition, I don't know if you guys follow like overseas, but in order to get your pro card, like you got to win your overall. Like they don't do top
First two
class,
places,
top
yeah.
two. Yeah, they don't do that. You got to win your overall. So the guy that won the national show there and got his pro card there, I think he ended up because there's a pro show later that night. He ended up placing, I think, like fourth. And there were some big names at that show, like, a lot of pros. So it was the show was incredible. I mean, yeah, it was
so you've done three shows now. You had Lehigh, you took the overall.
four.
Was it four? You did
Yeah,
Lehigh,
yeah, yeah.
Whitney Jones. Oh, and the Ohio one, the Ohio, right?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yep,
yeah. So Ohio, then Whitney, then Gymshark, Ryan Terry's Gymshark.
yep,
Okay.
yeah.
Um, and you said, I know I saw you at Lehigh, we were on stage together, but I remember your detail was that like your conditioning was crazy. And you definitely added a lot of size in that time off. But you said so it was Whitney Jones that they said a little more detail in that show. That was the one.
Detail in the back, yeah, which
Detail
like
back.
I always
Okay.
thought that, everyone's told me my back is kind of like my strong point. So I was like, all right, well, if Sandy says so. I'm all on board. But yeah, like I said, that the Lehigh, I was like shredded to the bone, like but that was the whole intent, that show,
Can we
right?
bring up that picture, Alex?
Yeah, I got it. Hold on.
Yeah, that
I
was a
just
while
remember.
ago.
I mean, it was similar to when G walked out at UGP with us, where you kind of knew he was going to take the overall. Like his conditioning was way above everyone else. Um, it's just yeah, the size, right? That was your first show, so um, you've definitely added a
Nasty.
lot to your chest and everywhere, pretty much.
Yeah, I mean and people don't realize like how
Yeah,
slow it is to put it, but look at that guy in the back. He's super, super nice guy. He was
yeah.
class D. He was just huge. But going into that show, like we knew that like I was gonna be outside. So it's like, all right, what do we do? Okay, we just bring in conditioning and just go, balls to the wall on that. And obviously
When
it paid off.
when you
Like,
can see the definition in this low quality of footage, you know you were peeled.
Yes, that looks
yeah, yeah.
ridiculous.
Yeah.
Well,
But
what?
let's talk about how crazy it is when like I don't know if you guys remember like the first show that you ever went to, but like you look huge on stage and then you get off stage and you like look tiny
You
because
feel
it's
so
like
tiny.
people don't realize like how small you are, but like when you're up on that stage and you got like a pump and everything's just like peaked correctly, like
Well,
you look a lot bigger than you actually
Well,
are.
at my last show, we typical with NPC at times where things are hectic backstage with and things get pushed back. I remember I
Yeah.
was in the back pump up room for like 2 hours, and so I had every 20 minutes or so I was adding a little bit of salt, a little bit of chocolate, and then by the time I got on stage, like I pretty much I was just so flat because I couldn't time the
Yeah.
meal right. And then I remember when after the pump left and I got to the restaurant, I was like, "Oh, I've never felt so small in my life because everything just left." It's like a timing thing, right?
Well,
Like you can only look that
well,
good for a short period of time.
So yeah, and that's why they call it a peak. But
Yeah.
what a lot of people don't realize, and like I hate looking back at hindsight, but when people have that like post show meal, like they think that it's all like the hamburgers and French fry and all that. It's like no, a lot of that's just water. So like most people know that in order to fill out your muscles, like you need carbs, sodium, and water. Well, what do most people do on show
Dehydrate
day?
themselves.
Like
Yeah.
they dehydrate themselves. So it's like, and if you're not loaded up to that point, like let's say if you're behind on your timeline and you're like still like trimming down like into peak week, you may have 1 to 2 days to load and then you're cutting water. So it's like, all right, well now you can't get filled out because like you need water to, shuttle the carbs and the
Cycle. Yeah.
glycogen.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, a lot of times people will have that post. I mean, my first show, like I forget what I had. All I know is it was really good, but I got back to the hotel and I took a picture and I'm like, dang, I'm like, why can I look like this, earlier? But
Yeah.
um,
Science.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
right. No,
That's
speaking
interesting
of,
though. That's interesting because you meant like the ideology is always to dehydrate yourself and to stay away from
yeah,
water, so
dude.
why is that the stigma you feel?
Dude, I read it maybe, I don't know.
Reddit.
I think sometimes it's bad coaching. Like I I know guys that like, you know, are going into the show, they're a few weeks out and I'm seeing them in the gym and I'm like I don't want to tell them like you're behind. And they're like, "Oh no, like my coach is saying like we're just going to drop the water at the end." And it's like, "No, like that's not how that works. Like you drop the water when like the fatigue goes down, but like if you still have fat, like nothing's going to change during peak week,
No
and then to get
diuretic,
them.
none of that will stop the fat from showing.
Yeah, 100%. So I think like a lot of people are like, you got to starve yourself and dehydrate yourself and whatever. I don't know where the stigma comes from, but maybe it's like the old school bodybuilders using, diuretics and stuff like that. But if you got your timelines down, like it's really not, it's not like rocket science.
I know some coaches are big on the old school method where you just dry out, but then a lot of coaches now are obviously with water cycling. Have you tweaked with how you've manipulated water before shows that's also stayed somewhat consistent for you?
So so for myself, like I haven't had to deal with it yet, right? So like my recent guy that competed, my biggest thing is like I try not to move a bunch of variables around because like if you have too many variables moving up and down, like you don't know what's working, what's not working. And then it's like, if you make a mistake, you try to troubleshoot and you're like, shoot, where was the error? So like this last guy that I had compete, like the only water manipulation that I really did was, the day of show, limited like the amount of water with each meal and then the amount of water that he had between meals. And then like the night before, I did drop his carbs a little bit and then just like increased fat and protein just to, inhibit a little bit of extra like diuresis. And like the rest of the water weight just came off in the morning. So I try not to do like any major water manipulation, but like, with this guy, he came to me like 7 weeks out and he was playing, it was his first show ever. It was the Natural Northern up in Cleveland. And he was gonna, take himself through his own prep. And I was just like, dude, like, you're a little behind. Like, I can get you there, but we got to get rocking and rolling. So for him, we had to push pretty hard, more than like what I really would like to, with a first time competitor. But yeah, we got there and like the last few days was literally just, shedding that water weight, dropping that fatigue. And then, like I said, I did a little bit of like water manipulation the day of the show and then changed up his macros a little bit the night before. And yeah, he ended up doing pretty well.
Gee,
But yeah,
how have you approached water manipulation with your clients? Because I haven't done a prep with you yet. We're about to, but
Similar approach how he did it, restricting fluid on the day of, just measuring certain amounts with meals, and usually right after the show too. Like as soon as they get off the stage and the show is over, they get the awards. I I highly recommend everybody to drink at least
2 liters, right?
2 liters of water. It'll
yeah,
help with that. A lot of people are hungry post show, but it's really just a dehydration aspect. So you get that water in you, and then you have that meal. You'll feel more satiated afterwards, and you won't go through those insane cravings throughout the whole rest of the night and,
yeah.
and days. So yeah, I do different approaches. I've done like in the
The
beginning of
vitamin
the
C.
week. Yeah, in the beginning of the week, I'll have the water higher, and then like I'll taper it down each day. So maybe, we start really high, like at 2.5 gallons on Monday, and then by Tuesday we're at 2 gallons, and then we're going to 1.5 on Wednesday, and then by Thursday you're at a gallon, and then the Friday, then maybe the night before the show you're at maybe 3/4 gallon or a half a gallon for the day, and then we're just sipping the rest of the show day.
yeah. So like every person's different, right? So like that approach that you mentioned, you may not do it with someone that you're like doing a linear load with, but if you're doing like a back end load, like yeah. So it's the one thing that I did forget to mention that I did is like during peak week, like I typically do macros. When we get closer to peak week, like I will set up like a meal plan using like the person's food that they've already been eating, but just like simplify their meals. And then I'll say like, you can have X amount of water with this meal and then X amount between your meals. So like I control the variables, like I said, throughout the entire week. That's the only other thing that I do. Like I just so I know like when you send in your check-in pictures, like post meal 1, 2, like at night, I know exactly like how much fluid you've had. I know how much water you had. And then like on the day of the show, um, water is like one of the main variables that you can like jump your weight up like quicker than trying to feed someone because you start overfeeding someone, you lose that core control. So it's like a good balance, right?
Mm.
So water is probably like one of the biggest tools, but yeah, but you have to have them show ready and stage lean in order to like successfully manipulate water if you're going to at all.
I think it was
Otherwise, it's just
it
like,
was you. You told me. I remember you texted me after I want to say Ohio, and you said I don't think Dylan was getting back to you in time, and you said I'm just gonna free ball this, and you were drank some pre-work like non-stim pre-workout or something, and you showed me the before and after of your back, and I was just like, holy shit,
yeah.
like.
Yeah, it was I was a little dehydrated for sure, but again that was a timing issue. Like I think I was really like two weeks behind. So yeah, for my prejudging, like I just wasn't all full there and I wasn't as conditioned as I wanted to be. So I was kind of like in that gray area, right? Like you either want to be super conditioned or you want to be full, but you don't want to play that middle ground because like someone's going to outsize you and someone's going to outcondition you. So, yeah, I had a little bit more water. I think I had like an extra rice cake and just loaded up on sodium and just like got a crazy pump. And yeah, I don't know if I ever posted it or not, but it was
And I was shocked that, by the way, your one of your feedback for that show was better quads, I think. And
quad
I remember,
sweep. Yeah.
and I was like, you're like, I don't know. I think your quad sweep is pretty nasty, to be honest. So,
No, dude, this is so funny. So, one of the
but
local
like,
guys,
if you have any photos or anything you want to share, by the way, along the way, like, feel free to share your screen. But
oh
like,
God.
I just remember it was really funny because you had sent me. I think you had like, oh, you brought your own coffee machine or espresso machine
Yeah,
to the
yeah,
show.
yeah.
And I remember your legs were just like popping. And then you were like, yeah, you won't believe what they said for feedback. And you're like, yeah, a little more quad sweep.
Well, that was literally right after they announced the pro weight caps, right? So they're like, we're gonna start judging legs. And so when they're like, yeah, need more quad sweep, I'm like, shoot, like I would have pumped up backstage if I would have known that. But no, there's a local guy here in Wilmington. He did a show last summer, and I kid you not, like he sent me the email and he's men's physique. The feedback was more detail in the hamstrings. Yeah,
How they even
yeah.
said.
Hamstrings. Yeah.
I mean,
That's
So
wild.
it's like an ongoing joke every time I see him in the gym. I'm like, you working those
Hamstrings.
hammies?
That's crazy.
Simon, would you mind sharing some of the trackers you use or
Yeah.
I mean,
maybe
actually, I
like
wanted to ask you about the ring you're wearing. My client actually has been recommending getting one of those. Maybe you can explain.
Yeah. Yeah, the Aura ring. So I've actually I think I've had this since I think I've had it for maybe like 3 years. Um I really like it. If you can handle the data, aka like your sleep stuff, like I'd say go for it, right? If you're a bodybuilder, like you're when you're at like peak bulk, like your sleep's not that great, you're eating way too much, and then when you're deep in prep, like well, I for myself, like I sleep better when I'm in prep. But some people don't. So if you can get over like seeing a bad sleep score and not letting it affect your day, like power to it. Yeah, I recommend it to everyone. I mean, like it'll tell me if I'm like starting to get sick because it, tells you your body temperature is like increasing
Mm.
or you had extra stress. So, um, as you know, like one of the biggest things in bodybuilding is like you're
Cortisol.
trained cortisol and recovery.
Yeah.
Like if you don't have great recovery, which I'm learning, like that was the biggest thing I've had to prioritize since being a new dad and like going through prep and bulk phases and stuff like that is like sleep's not always gonna be there,
right, right.
How do you manage that
but
balance though?
that's actually part of the reason why I like wanted to coach myself. Um, because like whenever you're coaching someone, like a lot of the times you have to make decisions based off like not a lot of data that the client's giving you. And so for me, like I was like, man, I'm gonna go through a life stage where like, bodybuilding, it's a very selfish sport, right? So you gotta do a lot of things for yourself, but I also like I'm not missing time out like watching my daughter grow up and being a dad, right? So for me, it was just like knowing that I'm gonna have to control my variables and like I can adjust that as opposed to like me having to like tell a coach like, hey, I didn't sleep well this night, like I'm going through this stage, like I want to do this. Like I wanted to have more control over my plan, knowing that like I know what's going on every single day in my life. So as far as like balancing it, I mean, sometimes you can't, if she doesn't sleep, like
You
it
gotta
is what
manage
it
it.
is. Yeah.
And,
So
and your
there's no
wife
secrets to it.
and your wife bodybuilds as well. So how do you like, I guess, well, first off, how do you guys meet? Like what got you guys together and
Oh
now,
God.
yeah. Your wife is everywhere behind you. We got to talk about it.
Uh,
Oh, yeah. So we met right when I moved back to Ohio. So my company actually, when I graduated college, they moved me out to California. So I was out there for 3 years. And then there's a role that opened up back in Cleveland. So I moved back and literally the weekend before I was moving downtown, my stepbrother, his girlfriend at the time, a wife now, she's like, man, I gotta create a dating profile for you. Because when I was out in California, like I didn't want to date at all. Like I didn't want to have a reason to stay out there. Like I love California, but like I'm not settling down out there. So I moved back and she was like one of the first few like girls that I like, matched with or whatever. We didn't talk or anything. Um, but the Instagrams are connected to the Hinge. So I I went and looked at her Instagram and I'm like, oh, I was like, we got like 30 plus mutual friends or whatever. So I added her. And her best friend since growing up, I went to school with, like
Wow.
at OU. So she reached out to her and was like, "Oh, do you know the Simon kid?" And she's like, "Oh yeah, he's a great guy." I'm like, "Oh, thanks, Kelly, for lying." Like, no, but so we ended up going on a date, and then literally like I had been in previously like 5 year relationship, like 2 year relationship. Like I was I think 20, God, I don't know how old I was when I moved back to Ohio, maybe 25, 26. I pretty much knew what I wanted at that point. And so we actually started dating like after a week after our first date. I kind of just like knew, she kind of knew, and I was like, I'm not going to waste time. So that's how we met. And she actually got into bodybuilding before I did. So she started working with my old coach, his wife, and it's something that she wanted to do for a long time. So she she did actually that Lieberman show as well. There's some old pictures of her
you,
when
you
she
mean you
competed, I
mean
believe.
well, because you guys won Lehigh together, which is really cool.
Yeah, we did. So she actually did a season before that. She did two shows. She did a show in Cleveland and a show in Kentucky. And then literally after her Lieberman show, I was like, let's do it. Like it'll be fun. So we started doing it together. We actually did a prep together for the Lehigh, which that'll test a relationship. I got some really funny stories from
Oh,
from
please,
that
because
prep.
me and my girlfriend are competing together for the first time this in
Oh,
10 weeks. So any advice,
okay.
any, guidance, we
Yeah,
greatly appreciate it.
so patience. Like I still remember we did like a Q&A on Instagram and someone's like, what'd you learn through the process? And I'm just like, patience, 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 patience. Like, because you're deep in prep and you're just like, irritable and you gotta track your food. And like one of the things that we were always like having trouble with is like I would have food tracked for the day and she would like, eat something that like I was supposed to track and I already had tracked. And I'm like, all right, well, we're out now. So I gotta go to the grocery store. Like, so we dealt with that like here and there, and God, I have this funny story. So it's like the infamous sandwich. So it was like a few days before we were leaving for the show, and we scheduled like maybe it was like a week, but we scheduled a couple massage. So I'm like running late from something, and I was like, hey. Can you like make this for me? Like I gotta eat at this time. So I sent her a screenshot of my Fitness Pal app and I get home, and so the screenshot was like some keto toast, some peanut butter, some bananas, and some turkey, right? So in my head, I'm like, all right, I'm making a sandwich with peanut butter and bananas on top, and then I needed some protein, so I just threw like some turkey on the side. So I get home and the sandwich is built, but the turkey's like underneath the bananas. And
Yum.
I'm like, I look at it and I'm like, yo, what is this? And she was so irritable, she's like, grabs it and threw it in the trash. She's like, I'm not doing this. I'm like, yo, okay, okay.
Okay, you win, you win. Whatever you say is right.
Yeah, so that was
Hey, but that's
that
kind of
was
like a Elvis sandwich, right? You got the banana, the peanut butter. Oh no, he puts bacon, not turkey,
you're
on it.
thinking of what's it called? Monte Cristo.
The Monte Cristo.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So it's like a running joke, but no, it was I will say like that show day was just it was so fun. Like it sucked getting there. Like, when you're going through prep, like it's hard enough when you're doing it, by yourself, but then you'd think like, oh, it'll be easier because I'm doing it with my partner, but you don't realize like you're kind of like in the thick of it. And you're both kind of like, battling your own stuff, whether it's like, hunger or food or just fatigue or whatever, you guys know like bikini girls have to like really they really got
Yeah.
to dig down a lot more than what guys do. So I think she was doing like I don't know, maybe an hour and a half, maybe even more daily of cardio
Yeah, I
on
mean,
like
I
little
started
no
following,
food.
I followed both of you like shortly before the show, and I know I'd spoken to be, but like, I remember her posting a lot about like a lot of cardio, and I was like, Jesus, like
Yeah.
she's really cutting down. And then even like that was my first show, and I'm looking, I'm backstage, all the guys are kind of like bopping around, you're slamming rice cakes, and then the girls were just like dead on the floor, like not even
Yeah,
moving.
shriveled
Like
up.
I'm like, ah, sorry, are you okay, miss? Like you good? But I guess like with prep at the same time, you're also like we all have different times of prep where we get our own head about like, oh man, I'm too small right now, or I'm behind on conditioning. And I know like Chris told me like I've had to talk to his girlfriend Nicole a few times because she'll get in her head and she almost doesn't believe Chris if he says something. And so like I'll say something to her and she'll listen, and then Chris is like, see, I said the same thing. Like
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
Sometimes as bodybuilders, we're, a victim of our own mind sometimes. And I think what you said, patience, is nothing that you learn overnight. That's something that you got to go through something and see, okay, hey, look, it's not just me in this, it's you too. You have your perception, I have my perception. And how
100%.
how could we help each other get better and move forward? Because there's gonna be the
Yeah.
days where you're 20% and she's 80%, and then, vice versa.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, those like going through that like challenging time, like cheering for each other. And it was my first show. It wasn't her first show, but um, to your point, like I didn't really have expectations going into that show. I think social media, I think it kind of creates this like false perception of like what you need to be on stage. Like this is where people get, in my opinion, they get hung up on, I want to win this show, I want to win this show, but like you can't control who shows up. The first season that I competed, I won an overall and clean sweep, true novice, novice, all that stuff. At a pretty big show, like the
a
Lehigh's
big
not a
show.
like
It was a pretty
yeah.
strong. It was a pretty strong show. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's not a small show. And then the following year I went and did the Ohio State, won my class, didn't win the overall. Did the Whitney, which I think they, marketed as like the largest regional show of that year. I got second in my open. So I went from like, winning
A
an
high.
overall to
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So I think there's like a lesson in that where like we didn't have any expectations going into that show, and that's what made it so fun. And I think like some people they get too concerned, not like what I did, like what improvements I'm doing. They start following, guys that are competing at their show and they post on Instagram and like, oh man, like I don't look that good. Like, and it's something like that takes time to
You take
have
away
that
from the
mind.
journey, right? You take away from your journey.
Yeah, and I hear a lot of people like talk about it. Like I used to always say it, like, enjoy the journey, enjoy the journey. A lot of people will say enjoy the journey, but like they they only want to execute when they're in prep, right? They don't want to enjoy the journey while
Year
they're in
round.
off season, yeah, year
Year.
round. They, are hung up on like wanting to win an overall. And it's like dude, like I love the guys. I know one guy back in Cleveland. Um, his name's Ethan. And he's not even like one of my clients or anything like that, but he has like this mindset where like he doesn't care about who's going to show or whatever. Like he's like wanting to improve every time he goes out. And a lot of people, bodybuilding is becoming very popular. And I think a lot of people like they do it for social
Vanity.
media, attention,
Yeah.
vanity, and it's like that was my perception of the sport before I got into it. Like when my wife was competing, I was like, why are you doing this? Like, it's kind of like vanity, and then until I went to the show and I saw her, I dude, so she was in her first prep. She was getting up at like 4 a.m., 12-hour shift. She would switch between days and nights as a transplant nurse at the Cleveland Clinic. And then she'd be like, get home from the gym after her 12-hour shift, make her food, and then, turn around the next morning. So it like takes a lot.
Well, I mean, there's a lot of like mindset, and e
Yeah.
even for a transplant nurse to have to balance a full shift and working overnight or however she was working into that takes a different type of mindset and a different type of dedication, you know.
Yeah. So with the social media, like people just do it for the wrong reasons, right?
Yep.
Um,
They put this immense pressure on themselves and they're comparing themselves to these Olympians and all this stuff and oh, I gotta look like this overnight
Well,
and
well,
I guess
here's
that's my
Yeah.
perspective
Yeah.
on the
So I
journey.
thought it was about vanity, but when I saw like all the work that she was putting in and how hard it was, it's like I'm sure all of you guys are very competitive. That's probably why you do the sport, right?
yeah.
So to me, I was like, yeah, this isn't like a vanity thing. Like it's a mental challenge.
Self-improvement.
It's
Yeah.
yeah, self-improvement, mental challenge. Like that's the toughest part. Like until you're like deep in prep and you're like, man, I'm craving freaking Outback Steakhouse, even though I haven't had it in 8 years. Like, there's a
Yeah.
problem,
I
right?
saw a video today that changed like I've always had this perspective, but it put it into a different perspective. It's like people want to say they're suffering and they're this and that, but you go into a children's hospital where these kids are, you know, intubated and hooked up to all these machines, you're gonna have a different perspective of life because you're not struggling. No one's putting you
Yeah,
through this. You put yourself through this.
That's
And
it.
100%. Yeah. When people complain to me, I'm like, you signed up for this. Like,
yeah,
you
There's
know,
there's a difference between being honest and complaining. Like you could tell someone like, "Hey, look, like this is a rough day in prep. Like I'm really having to dig deep." And then there's the complaining component of it where it's like, "Well, you did choose this." And I
yeah,
think
yeah,
I think the most beautiful thing about bodybuilding is that it's all about delayed gratification.
hmm
And I think a lot of the social media trends, it goes directly against that thought and that principle. And so I think it's okay to post online, keep people updated. It's fun to keep, and it's also holds you
yeah,
accountable. But at the same time, it's like because I've had conversations with people recently. Um, you were one of the people that convinced me to take an extra year off. We spoke about this quite a bit, and you basically said, look, like you want to add size and you're competitive and you want to go far. It's gonna do you more good than harm. And so I did, and I'm glad I did. But now that I'm trying to compete for an overall and get to nationals and go to the amateur Olympia this year, I've had people say, "Oh, no, I'm gonna change your mindset. Like you're gonna win it. You're gonna get there." And it's like that's I appreciate the confidence, but like to your point earlier about who shows up, you know, I don't want to get in my own head of like, oh, my season is a disaster if I don't get exactly what I want. Because I am
yeah,
very proud of the progress I've made since
yeah.
since we
yeah,
first got on stage together at Lehigh. So it's really just like managing that. It's okay to say my goal is to get X and not feel like, oh,
You're
you know,
obligated.
I'm cutting myself short
Yeah,
because some people will say, oh, you're just not confident then. It's like, well, no, it's just you don't know. And this sport, by the way, every year is getting that much more competitive. Like there's that many
yeah.
more competitors. So
Yeah, it's becoming more popular. People are doing it for, attention. Even when they say they don't. Like the easiest way for me to tell is like if you have a guy that's like on point during prep, but like can't manage their off season, they say like, oh, like I can turn it on whenever I want. But I think a lot of it comes down to like, whether you are conscious to it or not, when you're in prep, like you're in the gym and everyone's coming up to you like, man, are you doing a show? Like people like love when they see someone that's like shredded because getting that shredded is not easy thing to do.
Yeah.
Like every gym has that giant dude that, is roided up and is throwing up massive weight and is just big. But like when you see someone that's like really, really shredded, like, people are coming up to you. You're being seen, being acknowledged. I think nowadays, like with social media, you're kind of in this like quiet space where you're, like you said, comparing yourself to Olympians and you're like, man, like I want to look like that. Like, and subconsciously when you're in prep, like, people notice you more than when you're just like in a bulk or like maintaining or whatever like that. So it's like you said, social media is kind of a big problem when it comes to that. And people, I think sometimes consciously aren't aware that like they love prep not because they like the improvement,
Because
but
they're looking for
like,
the validation. So,
yeah, and even if
so
they're not like consciously aware of it.
yeah, how do you like knowing all this now? I think this comes with maturity and age and actually time in the sport. How do you keep yourself grounded?
Prioritizing like what's important, right? I know it's very simple to say, but like for me, like the job that I do is very stressful, like my career, like very, very stressful job. What I do, like I'm the only one in our division that does like what I do. And then on top of that, like I'm a dad. I gotta, put my time there, not have to. I want to put my time there. Um, and the one area where I decided this time around that I wasn't really going to prioritize is like being as active as I was on social media, like in my last preps. Like it's fun to, take videos and stuff like that. And it's like, you know, it's very rare that people get in that kind of condition and you want to like, take videos in progress or whatever, but so time consuming, right?
It
So
is.
to get myself like mentally there, like I just, have kind of taken a step back from social media. I think if I wasn't, doing coaching, I probably wouldn't be on social media at all. Um,
Maybe
yeah,
it's
it's
maybe it's a
just,
good segue. I am curious because I know you and Victoria both run pretty successful online businesses. So like for you specifically, how have you how have you attracted some of your clients? Like because at that point, even when you started coaching, I mean you hadn't done that many shows, right? And it's not like you
yeah,
have 100,000 followers, but I know
right.
you're a very efficient person. And if you look at like our content, we care about our content. Like we're not just throwing up like the most random like flex pick in
Yeah,
the mirror. It's like we actually put some thought behind our content. And you're very polished, right? Like especially when you start doing your it almost looked like a podcast, right? Like you were doing some more
the reels.
informative stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
I know you
yeah.
said that some of those caught on, but yeah, was that where you got most of your engagement from?
Yeah, and I think the biggest misconception that a lot of people have with like online coaching is that like you have to have a large following. Um, so for Victoria, like we invested in IFCA, which like they're really big in like lifestyle coaching. Pretty like decent investment, but like, it grew her business like tremendously. Um, they teach that like engagement is really way more important than following. Like, if you are more engaged with the people that you follow, that's the people that will like want to work with you, like people that can relate to you on not just like, oh, he knows how to get shredded. It's like, okay, what are his values?
A
Like, what does
personal
he
vat,
care
yeah.
about?
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, things that you
Interpersonal
believe
skills.
in.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah. So like I got to the point like last prep where I felt like I was trying too hard to like put out content that I like didn't really care about. Where like I enjoyed putting out the content where like I'm informing people, right? And most of my content was going towards lifestyle clients. So like majority of the clients that I have are lifestyle clients because not everyone wants to do prep. I think Alex, to your question, like the way that I manage that is like I got into coaching because like I actually enjoy coaching. Like like I have like rental properties and I have this, coaching business and then my career. So like I'm not really money motivated when I like coach, right? I want to help people like make a difference because like I went through a lot of like mental, like, I mean, still going through mental health stuff like for, years and years and years. Um, but that's where I get like reward from coaching. So like I typically cap myself at a certain amount of clients where like I know once I get past this threshold, it's like a little too much. And so I enjoy the ability to be able to like work with the guys that I want to work with and not work with the guys that I don't want to work with.
Right.
Um, so that's kind of like how I really manage things is really just being selective on like who I work with, knowing that like, I want people that are going to grind. They're going to be receptive to coaching,
You
not
don't have
just
to
from
baby
like a
them.
fit.
Yeah. I
Yeah. And it's not even that. Like I like to have like a lot of like one-on-ones with guys and, kind of like high touch. But I also like, if I give you a plan, like execute it. Like I
Execute.
don't need kind
yeah.
of excuses kind of thing. So
You
that's
do
I'm
you do your
fortunate.
job and I'll do my job kind of thing, like or just
Yeah.
follow the plan. On my job is to make the plan and adjust the plan. Right.
Well, it
Yeah.
helps with
So
the
so
data, I imagine. I mean, as consistent
Yeah.
they are, you get to use your data, and that's where I guess I don't know if you could show us an example of
yeah,
how
yeah,
you do
yeah.
stuff.
Yeah. So I send you a request.
Yep, I'll allow it.
Yeah, I don't have you'll allow
I'll allow
it. Thank you, sir.
It's like a judicial system, huh? I'll allow it.
Yes, sensei. Well, can you guys see this off-season Excel sheet?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, so like as far as like analytics goes, like it's really not like rocket science, but like I like to like optimize a lot of my spreadsheets so that I can like plug and play and not have to like start from scratch. So like this is, an off season workout that I did, but I have like a template. So I basically like break it down to, sum of sets per this phase, and then, sum of reps. So it's just using pivot tables and then categorizing like, if I'm doing upper chest and lower chest. So like for, people are like, oh, well, it's the same thing. I like in this split, which I really like this split. I did like a antagonist paired set day one, so it's just chest and back, and then the arm day focusing on more like delts, bis, tris. But basically, when I load this up and then change any of these values, it'll tell you the sum of your sets. So one thing that I'm doing in here is one, I'm like managing fatigue, right? So if I have a client that's like, hey, I'm like really burnt out on chest exercises. So it's like, okay, I know like, all right, we're already at 23 here for the week. We can, take some of these off. So I can do a live adjustment and then reduce this down. Or like I said, if I'm pulling, DEXA data and I'm like, hey, I didn't, I lost lean body mass in my legs. So it's like, okay, let's go ahead and add to this. And then, I have phases as well to the program. So typically what I do is like a 4 week on, then a deload, and then another 4 weeks, and then a deload, and then another 4 weeks. So like my phase two, it pulls values from like phase one to show like
Mm.
did you increase your percentage of your variance from phase one on your sum of sets or sum of reps. So in this case, like I reduced the volume but increased the weight. So that's kind of how my second phase was. And then again, it shows the sum of sets, and I'm keeping the same exercises. That's one thing that I'm really big on is like people try to get so fancy with their like training splits and people want like, oh, I want this crazy new workout. It's like, no, you're not like advanced enough to have all these like crazy splits and stuff like that. And like people don't realize like progressive, like progress your lifts and focus on the same lifts. Don't like hop programs every 4 weeks. I think that's what a lot of people struggle with. So like between phase one and phase two, it's literally the same exercises. It's just a different scheme. And then, in phase three, I actually reduced the amount of sets and went all tempo, right? So that's just like one little thing that I do from like a training aspect. Um, and then, I can share, let's see, I can share like my check-in sheet. Um, this isn't like anything groundbreaking, like, everyone
It's
has
just
a
interesting.
freaking
It's just interesting
check-in
because I
sheet.
know, like, for example, Chris trains with both GME differently sometimes, and he was just mentioning how differently we train, and I
Yeah.
think it's more about like also what you enjoy too, and what you can do for a long period of time, and what you can do well. Um,
Yeah.
like G does like to change up angles a lot. He's really big on feeling the movement and different pump,
Yeah.
and I'm very big on time under tension, a lot of negatives, and a couple like a drop set.
Yeah,
Um,
variety is good. I mean,
so
when you're at a deeper level into bodybuilding, like you need that extra
it also depends on
stimulus.
where you're at. Like G, for example, he's going to be pretty close to his pro weight cap once he gets there. He's a big guy.
Yeah,
So his style of training also has to be a little bit different. I needed to grow size this
100%.
offseason, so I really had to tax myself every single day in the gym. Whereas G, he's really now at the point of fine tuning, which is great.
Yeah,
Which is
and
What's
phase.
your opinion,
so
Simon? What's your opinion, Simon, over progression over volume?
Um, honestly, I think like a good training program has everything. Like a good training program has like a little bit of like compound and almost powerlifting style. And then you have, your hypertrophy ranges like 8 to 15. And then, for certain body parts, you get volume too. I think a good training plan has all three. I don't know if you guys are familiar with like Corey G Fitness. He's like old school muscle farm guy out of Columbus, Ohio, but he does a lot of like napkin workouts. So yeah, the one thing that I will say, like I don't ever post about like the right or wrong way of working out on social media because what works for one person is not going to work for another.
It's not
So
a one size fit all type
no, not
ordeal.
at
Yeah.
all. Yeah, not, I mean, so yeah, to answer your question, like I think it really just depends on like the quality versus like what style of training you're doing.
Quality, yeah. Well, and I know,
So
Simon, you're for the most part, you're macro based, and this is something when I switched to G for the first time, I went to a meal plan. Um,
that's the best
you're,
way.
you're
Yeah.
also a part-time chef, pretty much. I mean, your cooking skills are unreal. Like you could manage
I,
your own Instagram food page. Like
no,
it's
I've
crazy.
I've I've toned it back a little bit. Like that's another area that I've had to cut back and deprioritize because I got a little one now, so I got to be a little bit more efficient with
But
that.
have you? Is there a reason why? So you stick with macros even on your prep, right? It's just I know you probably simplify the meals a little bit, or
So I simplify the meals a lot. If typically with clients, like it really just depends. Like if I have a lot of trust in the client to like, let's say we implement a refeed, like they're not starting to add in random stuff that they haven't been eating all
right?
prep, like a bunch of cereal or a bunch of stuff that they're not used to eating that, could skew the visuals. Um, so a lot of times, like meal plan really is the best way from a coaching perspective,
Yeah.
uh, because you're controlling what they eat. If something goes wrong, like you know exactly where to look. You're not scrolling through their MyFitnessPal app being like, oh man, is
Yeah.
it this? Is it that? So yeah, I think meal plan is
Yeah. I
I think
mean,
that's probably
G does implement like he'll let me trade out certain carbs. So like for me,
yeah,
when I was working with my last coach, it was a lot. I mean, 6,000 calories a day. But like I got so sick of rice that it was starting to hurt my just.
yeah.
I had no appetite at all. So I know that one of the first things G wanted to do was get my appetite back up. So when I was able to switch some meals with like some plain pasta instead of rice or
Mhm.
something, it actually just like rebooted my taste buds again, and I started getting my meals down a lot easier. So that was
Yeah,
good.
it's a psychological break, right?
Yeah.
That's kind of like refeeds too.
Yeah.
there's like limited science to say like, oh, refeeds are gonna, boost your metabolism. Like a lot of it's
Yeah.
just like a psychological break. Um, that's kind of where like I like the macro stuff is like I'm a big foodie, right? So I'm very type A when it comes to like data and
No
regimen, but
way. You're
like
type A, bro? No way.
but
I
I'm
couldn't tell.
not I am not one of those guys that can just eat rice, broccoli, and chicken.
Yeah.
Like yeah, no shot in hell.
But
So
you look, but you
um
you you have you keep yourself in check. Like we had a guest on
for
earlier,
sure.
Lynn, and same way, like student of the game, you can have more flexibility and freedom if you're that kind of person. It's the people that
Yeah.
can't keep themselves accountable that just that's a slippery slope for them. Um and um not to rush you here. I know G has a client coming up, so I knew but I did want to touch on the mental health aspect a little bit here, Simon, because I know
Yeah.
that's a big part of our podcast, and we've all been very transparent about things we've had to overcome. You know, Chris being a former police officer and having a brain injury, and G and I have had injuries that we've had to overcome. So I'm just curious with you and what you're willing to share in terms of what you've battled in the past or like things you've done to stay in the game. And because if I'm looking at you and we've been friends for a few years now, but like let's say I didn't know you and I come to your Instagram, it's a pretty drastic shift, like physically and mentally. In a
Yeah.
short period of time, you've won an overall, you're now a girl dad, you've gotten married. It's like you have a job you like, you manage properties, like that's a lot.
Yeah, so I mean the one thing that I'll say is like social media, it's all a highlight reel, right? Everyone's got their battles. Like you mainly see all the good. I think a lot of people that will go to my Instagram, like they're like, oh, this kid's got it together, but you don't see like the stuff that people deal with on the back end. I think the biggest thing is like pertaining to bodybuilding, I think a lot of people use it as like an outlet, right? You don't get me wrong, like you get a lot of benefits from taking care of your body, your body takes care of your mind. But I think a lot of people like they don't fix the root cause of what is causing that like mental health stuff, right? So I think for me, it's been more of having like self-awareness of trying to find that root cause. So like I mean, I wouldn't say I had a bad childhood, right? Like my parents moved to the US when I grew up, like my dad dealt with a lot of mental health stuff. Like he had like a traumatic injury when he was like a little kid. So he had a lot of stuff going there. My mom had a lot of health problems and, some alcoholism and stuff like that. So I dealt with some like pretty traumatic stuff going into like my freshman year of college. I actually lost both of my parents. I don't
I'm
really
sorry
like
about
share
that.
a lot of that. Yeah, so I don't really share a lot of stuff about that, but I kind of, sometimes tell my story to try to help like relate to people. Um, when I was dealing with a lot of like my mental health stuff, like at first I was using the sport to kind of like,
Distract
you
yourself.
know, distract myself. Yeah, like that's typically what people do when they have mental health stuff. Like they think
Traumas, yeah.
something is fixing it, but it's not. Like there's always a root cause. So for me it took, I mean, I did a lot of like talk therapy, I did psychotherapy, I did um like psychedelic therapy. Like I know that's like very, very trending now, like using I don't know. There's a lot of
M-
like clinical research being done using like psilocybin and stuff like that. So I've like tried it all, right? Um,
How do you feel about the psilocybin treatment? Because I have a it was a traumatic brain injury, and
yeah.
I've been looking into that how it could help with PTSD and stuff.
Yeah, it's the platform needs to be correct with like the treatment, right? So typically if you look up like MAPS, it's I forget the acronym, but basically what they use, and it's a lot of like PTSD stuff as well. And but there's a lot of like research on psilocybin having neuroprotective properties and neuroregeneration. But the platform that most people use is like you'll work with like a psychotherapist, so you're almost doing like a talk therapy. And then the way that it's explained is these psychedelics allow the certain part of your brain that like suppresses trauma to kind of like free up that trauma so you can actually like process it. So when I say having a good platform, it's like, okay, you have someone that is identifying potential areas that could be like a
Like a
trigger cause.
psychologist, right? This is like a psychologist.
Yep, yeah. And then they use those substances to kind of like uh open up that part of your brain that suppresses that trauma so it actually allows you to like deal with it. So for me, like I thought a lot of my traumas was from like my parents passing away, but it wasn't. It was like their relationship and me watching it like grow up, right? So like I always had kind of I would say challenges with like relationships. Like there's definitely certain things that like I would be like triggered by that like I think most people wouldn't be triggered by, but it was because of stuff that like I
You
witnessed.
saw, yeah.
Yeah, so
The brain is
I
very
think
resilient, man. Like the stuff you see, you kind of digest and you kind of bury it deep down, and then you don't know until you are triggered. But it takes a
well,
different type of mentality to be like, hey, okay, I may be the problem. Let me be accountable. How do I fix it? How do I rewire my brain to see this in a different light?
yeah, and especially if you have like a traumatic event, you think that that is the cause, right? Like in some cases it is. But in all cases it's not. So sometimes you're like, okay, well, I lost both my parents and I'm like, what do I do now? Right. I'm dealing with, this like pain and grief and whatever. It's like, do I put my time into other things or whatnot? And then it just took literally probably 11, 12 years of just like life and working through my stuff and trying different avenues to like realize, okay, these are like my boundaries. I understand why I have these boundaries. I understand why I have these triggers. And um, you just you kind of get to the root cause of some of your problems. Like you never fix it, right?
But it's rewiring
But
your brain. You had to kind of like rewire it.
yeah, and
Doesn't
that's
mean
why
that
I
it won't
say,
trigger you
yeah,
because,
yeah, yeah. Yeah, it always will. I mean, it's PTSD, right? There's
yes.
there's certain things that are triggered, but if you can identify those triggers, that as opposed to, like I said, a lot of this sport is like, I got to be all in, like blah blah blah. It's like you do, like if you want to be successful, you do, but a lot of people use it as a avenue to kind of
Distract themselves from the,
distract themselves. Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah.
I did
Yeah,
try. I
for
mean, I know
sure.
Simon. I was dealing with some things last year, and I know I called you, um, and after that, I did try ketamine therapy, which was very
Hmm.
interesting. Chris, I know you had the best experience with that, and I know you were pretty cautious about me doing it, but it is very interesting the things that we can do, to open up your neural pathways, and it's not just talk therapy is important, I think, but it's more of I did it so that my therapy could have more effect on me because I wasn't going to
Yeah.
be susceptible at that point in time to the benefits of talking things out, right? Because your brain is it's physical. It's not it's actually it's part of your body. It's not like, you have to address it. So, it is interesting that you've found success in those things, and I'm glad you have. And it's also interesting. I think there's a stigma to bodybuilding that it's just unhealthy, and that you must get like a body dysmorphia and problems with food by doing it. But
Well, you
in
do.
reality, you do. But in reality, like we've seen people through bodybuilding that actually have a better relationship with food now. Like we had a guest who had a horrible eating problem, and she now feels healthier about food after going through bodybuilding, which is interesting. And I know,
Yeah.
I don't know, like, do you find that like after bodybuilding that you would say there's more positives that have come from it than negatives when it comes to maybe food or
Yeah.
happiness?
I think a lot of people they learn like discipline And I think the reason why I like macro tracking, especially for lifestyle clients, is like you force the client to learn nutritional labels. You force the client to understand like what's in food. Like, how many people do you know that are like, oh, this giant toast of avocado toast is healthy because it's green? And it's like, dude, that's more than my daily
It's
amount
a
of fat
thousand
that I
calories
eat.
right there, just in one
Yeah.
in one
Yeah.
sitting.
So, right. But it's not to their fault. That's the world we live in, right? So,
Ignorance, right? I mean, everything's with knowledge.
right. So, but then on the other hand, like you learn what's in food, which isn't always a good thing because then you're like, analyzing everything. So you have to have a good balance of like knowing what's in your food, and then being like, okay, like it's not going to kill me, right?
Yeah.
I think the biggest benefit, and I'm noticing it now more than ever, is like having a daughter and just having a kid in general, like all the healthy habits that like my wife and I have learned, like she's gonna watch us do that. Like she's gonna like, dude, this prep, like she's making me hit my step goal like super easy because like I
I
just
saw that
put her,
15,000 steps, 12,000 step. Woo.
yeah, I put her in my carrier and like we just go for a walk. Like,
Yeah.
she's with me on my walks and um she's literally eating the same food as I am. Like, the other night she had shredded chicken, some avocados, some bananas, like sweet potato. She eats most of the food that like I prep ahead of time. So,
Yeah, well, you're eating baby
that's,
food.
I actually was last prep. I was eating
Shut up,
baby
really?
cereal for digestion. Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's good stuff. But yeah, that's also tough because, she's like snacking. I'm like, dang, I could use
Dude,
this
Yeah.
I
extra
think he had
meat.
to dip anyways
Uh,
because of
well,
the
well, I know he had a issue with digestion. I
Yeah.
forget. I think for him it was just I think too many variables in the mix at one time. So I know one of the things he did was just simplified, you know, just everything supplement
It can also be
wise, food wise.
stress
Yeah.
too. A lot of people don't realize that like it stems from your gut and then, people will have anxiety or stress and a lot of it's from kind of the foods that you're eating.
but that's why I decided for myself and I told G that we're gonna do that before he starts his prep. It's just to get a better understanding of, that internal health. Because I mean,
Yeah.
we're just so used to like you said that chicken and rice that sometimes that may be causing, a lot of underlying, issues and we don't know
Yeah.
until we poop in a
Yeah.
little container.
Yeah, I haven't done one of those tests.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's the human body is crazy. I mean, I think one of the coolest things whenever I have like a new client lifestyle or prep and they start like tracking their macros, they're just like, man, like I feel so much better. Like, and they're like, I love the regimen,
Yeah.
like I think that's what bodybuilding does for a lot of people
Stability.
that
I've become
other,
so
yeah,
sensitive though. Like the minute I remember a few weeks ago, I had to go out to San Francisco for work, and I mean, I was in a office for hours on end straight, and these
yeah,
people aren't. They're not leaving time for 6 meals a day. They're
no,
in there. They maybe having 2 meals, whatever. The breakfast is mostly pastries, whatever, and
yeah, you're filling up on fat.
yeah, so what I do is usually I tell G in advance, but since I've already done it, I know how to do it. But I'll switch to macros while I'm traveling, just
Hmm.
because there's just no way I'm going to be able to manage food, especially when you travel over 8 hours and you have to. It's not easy to store food.
Yeah.
But I have noticed that my body is so sensitive now. Like even my birthday dinner, right? Like it my body's so used to a certain plan, a certain thing. If I have a few
Yeah.
drinks and like that was the worst hangover I think I've ever had. It was well worth it. But like my body's so sensitive now from being, have you noticed that like your structure that if you ever go off structure that you feel the repercussions from it or
I don't, not terribly, but then again, like when I, go out and eat whatever I want, like it's still sensible, right? Like I'm not having like fast food, like
right.
I'm still cooking my own food and stuff like that. And I think like that's the one thing that I enjoy about macros is like I can change my food up, right? So like even when I'm deep in prep, like I'm not gonna have like crazy meals anymore, but like, I'll switch up my meals. I think that helps me. Luckily, I don't have to travel as much for work as I previously did, but yeah, that's the approach that I would take is macro tracking just gives you a lot more flexibility. I think the one thing that I will say, like this off season, like I definitely was way more flexible than I was like, the first 3 years of bodybuilding. Like I was a robot, almost to a point where like it wasn't really always fair to my wife because it's like, I track my day, but so then, we're not doing certain stuff. But this past off season, like I've just realized that the longer you do this, the easier it is to get away with like
Mm.
having that flexibility.
Yeah.
So
You have a better
Because
base.
your body
You
adjusts.
have a better base.
right. So again, it's back to what I said at the beginning of this conversation was like build habits, not goals.
Yeah,
Like
that
you
makes
build
sense.
habits and your habits take you to your goals.
Mm.
So for me, it's like if you do this long enough, you'll learn what's in food and you can have that balance. It's just you got to do the upfront work to get there. And most people don't want to stick it out to do that work long term. It's
But I
kind of like
think
investing.
this is where mental health plays in. And let me commend you because, as a father now, you you're breaking the generational curses that happened, prior, and you're
Trying
creating
to, yeah.
these healthy habits.
Yeah.
Is there any advice you would give to someone that may be struggling in silent and may not know how to approach it?
Yeah, I think I mean, I don't know if this is going to resonate with a lot of people, but I think a lot of people think that like mental health is, genetic or like hereditary. A lot of it's like environmental. So, like for example, like my dad had a pretty rough life. Like I think his dad was an alcoholic and I don't want to speak too much on that, but
Mhm.
like didn't have the
You don't
best
have to.
relationship and
Yeah.
um like he dealt with mental health as well, but it was also back in the day where like guys don't really talk about mental health. They don't, seek health.
They don't believe in it,
Um, they don't, yeah, because you want to be
They
this
think it's a sign of
strong
weakness. Yeah.
masculine, yeah, 100%. So I think like the biggest thing is just understanding that um if you can work on figuring out your your triggers and like the root cause that's when you can like see an actual change. So um I would say for any guys that are struggling with mental health, like there's always kind of like that light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to figure out like how to get there, and it's not by like constantly just distracting yourself with other things. It's actually seeking out help. It's trying to
facing
identify
those demons.
100%. Yep. So, and just knowing that like it's not hereditary. Like a lot of people think that like alcoholism is hereditary. It's like, no, you're a product of your environment.
What
So
you
like,
consume.
Right.
right. So that's the biggest thing. Like, my wife's gone through a lot of stuff too. So her and I like, our biggest goal for our daughter is to make sure that like we're very aware that if there's any situation going on, like we're not exposing her to anything that like we were exposed to.
Right.
So it's definitely not hereditary, it's environmental. Um, so a lot of people get hung up on saying like, oh, well, my grandpa was an alcoholic, my dad was an alcoholic, that means I got to be an alcoholic. It's like, no, like you don't. It's just
That's a victim mindset, I believe, and not to like put that on anybody, but at a
no,
certain point, you could be a victim or a victor to what you've been through or what you've consumed, through your eyes.
yeah, but
Because that,
it's
go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, because I feel like now a lot nowadays, more than social media could cause more damage than good because you're seeing this, you're putting in your head all these thoughts that necessarily aren't real, you
Well, the
know?
problem is the problem is too with social media is like the algorithms are
I was about to say. Yeah.
they're good and they're bad, right? So like if you're going through a dark phase and you catch your eye on like some kind of post that like I don't know, let's say it's like a post about like infidelity or something or having relationship issues. It's like all of a sudden like your explore feed is filled up with like
Infidelity, cheating.
infidelity
Yeah,
stuff. Yeah, like those street interviews, like whatever. Like that's why like social media, they from a analytics standpoint, like there's it's very difficult to put safeguards on that, right? Like you
yeah,
can't put safeguards where it's like, all right, I want targeted ads because this person is spending X amount of time on this, but if it has to do with this topic, then don't feed them those ads, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, like you said, like you're constantly consuming this stuff. Um, so yeah, it's just it's hard,
Yeah.
right? I think I'm about to be 33. There's a lot of self-awareness and self-reflecting that I've had to do to like get to the at least the point that I'm at right now. I think a lot of people they wait a little too late. Like I have these conversations with like older guys all the time. They're like, man, like, I didn't figure this out till I was 45. I didn't figure it
yeah,
out till I was 50.
yeah.
Um, so I think like, yeah, there's a lot to say on it. I do like that there's more awareness and people talk about it more and talk about like, you know, struggles, especially from like guys and stuff like that, because, there's, I think a smaller community of like guys wanting to share about their, you know, their
Well, you
problems.
said there's a stigma too. I mean, like with men in general, I feel like we're portrayed to be this, strong, individual.
Yeah.
I don't talk about this a lot. Prior to Arabella, my daughter, I lost my first daughter at 8 months. It was a stillbirth. And right away they gave me the baby and Isabella was her name. Isabella in my hands and they're telling me, hey, you could cremate her, you could do this, you could do that. And I'm just like, dang, just give me a second to process
Yeah.
what's going on right now.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, as a man, either you pick up and move forward because that's what we're taught to do, or you could dwell in that moment and let that, consume you.
Yeah. And then you also have to take into consideration, like, your wife's going through that,
Yeah.
right? Or your girlfriend or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's like you gotta at some point like shut it down and be strong for both of you guys, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I think, and it's not like you have to, but I think like guys naturally they want to do that.
They want to
They
fix, they want to
wanna
heal. Yeah.
they want to fix or at least just like be the supporting structure, like in a case where like both people can't be dealing with that, right? So like, my wife and I, um we had a miscarriage on our first baby and it was at like the 10-week mark. And like it hit me pretty hard, but like it really hit my wife. Like she was born to be a mom. And at the time, like I just had to shut it off. And I was like, all right, I just gotta be there for her and help her get through it. And I think a lot of guys like take on a lot of that weight because they want to, right?
Yes.
But it's also important that we also, take care of ourselves when we do get the chance to.
It's being okay with accepting help too. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
we don't have all the answers. And it's also
yeah,
with friendships too, right? Like as friends, we take turns. I mean, like Chris and I are very close, and there's times where he might be going through something and I'm there for him or vice versa. Um, and it's just like about that balance in your life. And
yeah,
just you were talking about a lot about environments, like the people in your life are so important. The people I have in my life
yeah,
now are completely different than people I had in my life the last time I was competing. So I can see
yeah,
the benefits, but mentally and physically, whether it's your stress levels and cortisol or whatever it is, like it's just it's how quickly your life can change when you have the right people in it. It's
yeah,
incredible. So
yeah. What's that like cliche saying that like you are who the five closest people you hang out with or whatever the saying is.
Mm. I like
Like,
to say iron
it,
sharpens iron. I mean, same
yeah,
mentality because if if
no,
if you
it
if you
is.
got a dull sword around you, it's not going to sharpen you up.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's really, really important. I don't know about you guys. Like I have a really, really good group of guy friends. They're like literally since high school. I think they're
yeah,
yeah, that picture up there.
Everybody. Yeah.
We literally talk like every single day on like Instagram. There's like a group of seven of us, and same thing. Like everyone's very successful, but like, we all have a blast whenever whenever there's like a wedding or whatever, because we're throughout all the US. Um, but like I know, if anything were to happen, like all those guys, like, have your back, and we're kind of constantly motivating each other to be better people, although we're kind of a bunch
Yeah.
of degenerates most of the
Well, listen,
time.
I mean, it's also the people in the sport I've noticed, um, it can it can amplify who you are. Like I don't really think it changes you,
Yeah,
but
yeah. Yep.
especially on the PED side, if you are on the PED side, like as a like some of these people at the highest level, obviously that part is genetic about like how certain compounds like change you. But I
Oh, you're
noticed
talking
that
about
in the sport,
PEDs.
no, that was part of it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But in general, the sport it's going to amplify you. It's an
Yep.
amplifier, and I've
It's
noticed
like
that
money.
I either love the person I meet, or I'm really not a fan of it. I know I would never have them in my circle, kind of thing in the sport. Like I don't, there's
Yeah.
not too many people that I'm like, I don't know about. Like it's pretty clear. Like I've built some of the strongest friendships I've had in this sport, and I've only been in it for
Yeah.
four years. And even people that maybe I haven't even met. I mean, we've only been in person what once at the show, and
Yeah.
we've kept in touch for years now. And
Yeah.
it's like, and I still, you're one of the people I went to for advice when I was at a low point because I trust your opinion and. So I just think that's been a really cool experience for me in this sport is the people that
Yeah.
you meet. Um, you just have to be open to it and be I guess
Don't
vulnerable.
don't don't be
You
don't be
know?
the guy backstage that has your like headphones on, like in the zone, like not talking to anyone because you're looking at everyone as competition. Like,
Well, that's the funny thing because
like
generally speaking, I'm pretty quiet at shows because I do like to stay focused, but at the same
for
time,
sure.
I still made an effort to talk to you or you meet a lot of cool friends
I
like Chris.
remember
Yeah,
you came up to me and I was like frantic 'cause it was my first show, and
yeah.
they took late, and I was like, man, I didn't pack any rice cakes. Like I'm searching for rice cakes. I think one of the protein girls like gave me a stack
Yeah,
of rice
I
cakes,
think you had a
but
rice cake in your mouth at all times when we were having a conversation. And then, Chris G and I were all in the same exact class at a show, and that's how we met. And I mean,
oh really? Oh, that's
yeah,
cool.
yeah. Chris was literally, we were on the steps before going on together, and he was telling me
Yeah,
about how he got flown out by Dark Sport because of his brain injury and experience, and we were connecting
that's
at like a
dope.
mental health level right then and there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And then, then G won that show, that overall, and we've all stayed in touch since. And now we have a podcast together. And I remember it was like 14 people what Monday night, Chris, at the dinner, and my mom was
Yes.
there. And I think I was like, "How long have you known these people?" And I'm like, "Some of them like only 8 months. I mean, I've known Chris and G maybe for like was it almost over a year and a half now, but um,
Yeah.
you
Well,
know,
you have to be a certain type of person to like do the sport. So like not always, right? But most of the people that I've met are like, they grind, they want to better themselves, and like those are always good people to surround yourself with,
yeah,
right? Um, so there's I've met a lot of good people, a lot of cool people. Even at the UK show, I still kind of connect with this one guy, Richie, who seems to have like a really good successful business over in the UK. But um, yeah, it's very easy to meet good people.
yeah.
But like you said, the sport does bring out, like I said, it's kind of like money. Like, if someone wins the
Yeah.
lottery, like they weren't,
You,
an
a good person to
asshole
begin
because of
with.
the money. Like the
Yeah.
money just made it, like it just accentuated who they
Amplifies.
already were.
Yes.
Yep. Yeah,
Yes.
100%.
It's funny because you spot bullshit a mile away too, and like we all, I think we pick up on like good vibes and positivity. And I know
Yeah.
a few times we'll share, I don't know, something we see on Instagram, and we're like, "Yep, I've seen that before," or
Yeah.
"Yep, yep, I know what you're talking. I know where you're going with this." Like,
Yeah. The problem with me is like what do they call RBF, like resting bitch face. Like
you,
I'm
you
just
do look
like
pretty
very
mad,
like
yeah.
yeah, everyone like anytime one of my buddies like, he brings a girlfriend around and he's like, I don't think he likes me. He's like, no, that's just like Simon. Like he
That's
just
Simon.
Yeah, like that's just like my
It's a bit
closest
it's
friends.
honestly a
Like,
bit like G. It's a little bit like G, to be honest. Like,
yeah, I'm
yeah,
very like stoic and quiet, but like,
Stoic.
you
That's
get
a
me on
beautiful
a
word.
yeah.
you get me on a like a call like this, like I'm an open book. Like I get along with pretty much everyone as long as
But
you're a good
Yeah.
person.
I feel like that just comes from life, you know, and I think, you know, you just don't want everyone to access your energy the same
For
way.
sure.
Yeah, because there are a lot of, you know, vampires out there that just want to suck what they can suck, you know. So,
Yeah, uh that's a very, very good point. Like very, very well said. Um
Yeah. But
yeah,
so
I think as you get older and you know you have priorities, like you have a daughter, like there's just things that don't matter and people that don't matter, and the ones that do matter, you prioritize, and whether it's friends or whatever, and then the people that are just like negative and spend your energy, you're like, even family members sometimes at times, like,
yeah.
yes, I know.
yeah, we all have them.
So Simon,
Yeah.
I'm curious, how much do you keep up with like with the pros? Like, do you watch a lot of the shows or like I know you used to a
Um,
little bit, but I feel like
I follow Ryan Terry. I don't really follow a lot of the other guys. I like I have to catch myself a lot of times. Like, I'm not looking at guys that are winning national shows. I'm not looking at guys that are winning regional shows. Like, my feed is filled with Olympians, right? So
right.
like it's hard to shut your brain off where you're like, all right, like like comparing yourself, right? So you have to kind of shut it off. So um I don't like follow it that much, to be honest with you. Like, I've always had this kind of like notion where like I don't have to make bodybuilding like my entire life to like be good at it. Um I think that's where most people kind of get it wrong. Like, they get so hyper focused that they like don't prioritize themselves, they don't prioritize their relationships. And so for me, like, I can do everything that I want and still, be a good partner and a good dad.
Yeah,
And so,
absolutely. I mean, I think I've admired you a lot. That's why I told the guys I wanted you on. I think I'm definitely a bit type A and analytical, not to your degree at all, but I know I because I played international lacrosse, so a
yeah,
pretty high level. And so I've just been trying to apply that same mindset to this sport.
yeah,
And I've definitely dealt with especially, um, you know, all three shows I've done, I've been natural. And I think there's this set stigma of like people, a lot of the negative and the naysayers. And I've tried to put that to the side, because I know what I'm capable of, and I know I'm gonna get a
yeah,
lot of messages from people next time I'm on stage, people that probably doubted me before, and they're probably gonna say, "Oh, congrats, you look great." And it's like all I'm gonna say back is, I told you." Like, I mean, it's just
yeah,
like a different. I know Chris and I talked about this, but like I take pride in doing the little things really, really well, and anything I can possibly control. And I think that's why I just naturally start to connect with people that are pretty similar, like
yeah,
you focusing on the habits, right? Chris has grown a tremendous amount just in the short amount of time I've known him and how he approaches his training. And I know that's probably a bit of a product of the people around you, Chris. So
Yeah. No,
um,
definitely.
I
So
don't,
I
yeah,
feel like support and this is just, you know, I guess I have a more faith-based view on life that it takes a village. It takes a village not only to raise a
yeah,
child, but we're all children at the end of the day, right? There's a part of us that needs to be healed. And if you surround yourself with the negative mindset people, it's only going to bring you down and put you down to where they're at. Now, if you surround yourself with the positivity people, like Simon said earlier, surround yourself with people who you want to be like, you know, and then you start developing those good habits
yeah,
and that good mindset, you know.
yeah. I
If you,
think one thing that you said there that kind of stood out to me is like, I've said this before, like, this sport is very, very selfish. I think it's easy for people to be like, oh, I'm in prep, like, can't you see kind of like the pain that I'm going through? But a lot of people don't realize like the effect that it has like on their partner too, right? Like, um, that's something that I don't think a lot of people talk about. Like, it's like I was not competing when my wife did her first two shows. Like, so I got to taste the other end where like some people they've only been, the one person doing shows and, their girlfriend or boyfriend or whatever, like has never done one. So they don't understand. I think that's like
Yeah.
one of the things that is important is like being appreciative of the people that like allow you to put that focus into something that you want to do if you want to be good at bodybuilding. Like you said, it takes a village. Like, if my wife didn't support me, if, she gave me flack for every time I, went to the gym because, I needed to do my cardio or whatever, and we have a 9-month-old at home, like, I wouldn't be able to do it. So, I think that's something that a lot of people don't acknowledge enough, I
Yeah.
think.
Oh, you just
Oh.
gave me chills, bro. Because I just remember seeing because I was gonna mention it. It was your video that Alex pulled up, and I see your wife. She's there cheering on the side, and that's
Dude,
such a beautiful moment
yeah,
because it's like all that sacrifice, and look,
yeah.
this is the product of all that sacrifice, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it's something small in like a grand scheme of thing, like a bodybuilding show, but like just to, have that video and her like cheering me on. And then like what I was gonna share this earlier because Alex was talking about like the show was like all crazy backstage and all shows
All
are,
right.
but I was in the crowd because Bikini came on after Men's Physique and they were doing like a best in show. And I remember I was like sitting in the front stage, like cheering my wife on in her open. And all of a sudden they're like, and now we're bringing out the competitors for best in class, which I should have been in. So I'm literally in the crowd watching my wife, and they decided, oh, we're just going to randomly bring out the classic overall and the bodybuilding overall. And I'm like, wait, shit, like I need to be up there.
That's me.
So I literally sprinted backstage, ran on stage, looked like a complete clown. And like, obviously, I ran up there, didn't have a pump, nothing. I probably looked ridiculous, but it was like, man, like that's a funny story because like I was like most people would have just stayed back there, but like I was like, no, I'm
You're supporting your
going in the
wife.
front row and I'm cheering her on. And
That's beautiful.
like the fact that both of us won our overalls, like that was, I mean, that'll top no matter what. Like, you know,
Yeah, the
yeah.
swords, which they no longer hand out swords anywhere anymore, I think, because
Dude, it
there was
was,
some incident. But do you have both of them
oh
hanging up
God.
together?
Right now, no, but I did in our last house. They're big. Like,
Yeah, they
Oh, cool.
I'm sure. How tall are you?
I'm like 5'10", 5'11".
Yeah, so that sword's about my height. I'm like 5'7", 5'8". They look tall.
Yeah, you were. Well, I know because we were together in the true no in the novice and true novice, I think,
Yeah,
and then the opens we were separate. Um,
yeah,
but I mean, yeah, it was a big show. It was a competitive show. I
yeah,
do think it's interesting how I don't they've never been big on production. Like they don't have like LED setups or anything. I know down in Florida it's a different beast.
yeah.
UGP like
Probably in
UGP
Texas too.
the one we were at together UGP. I mean they have Olympians coming to watch finals like like Laura Lee Chapados and Issa, the wellness girl, they're all there. Mark Anthony, right? So it's like, it was a different experience for sure, like going from that church in Pennsylvania in the middle of nowhere in a rainy day to
Yeah,
UGP under in South Florida. And I talked
dude.
to the guys, I was like, you know what, like I want to do good shows, but I also don't want to be stubborn by ego. And I'm open to going to shows in other states, maybe, just because and I've seen I've watched all the national shows, and you will have guys that they'll win overall in another show. And like my friend, my opposing client, Adam, for example, he came. He does classic NMP. He came second and third place in the two Florida shows he did in his height class. Then he goes out to Vegas and he wins overall classic at Mark Anthony and Jen Dory's show and came second overall in men's physique, right? And he comes back, he's like, damn, like I I just dominated. And he was like, I haven't been to a show outside of Florida yet. So it's just very
I
interesting
I
how it's a little bit different everywhere.
I
Yeah.
I highly recommend doing different shows. Like,
Yeah.
that was my biggest takeaway last season. Like I did the Ohio and then I did one in Arizona and then I did one in the UK.
Yeah.
And this year, like there's a show in Wilmington, super, super small.
I was gonna
There's
ask what show you're doing. I want to hear your plans.
yes, so I don't this might change because I'm like pretty ahead of schedule right now, but tentatively I'm gonna do the DC Pro Am in Virginia. That's June 7th. And there's actually a Wilmington show, like literally, 10 minutes away that same weekend, but it's a smaller show. And I was like, okay, well, I'm doing junior nationals this year, so I want to get in front of like a good judging panel.
Right.
So you have back to
And
back to back peak weeks.
so I have 2 weeks in between.
Okay, okay, okay,
Wait,
okay.
sorry,
Yeah,
you
yeah,
said
yeah.
they're the same weekend, one of these shows, or
So I decided to do the DC Pro Am instead of doing the one in Wilmington.
Oh, okay,
oh,
okay, okay,
Meaning
okay,
like
okay,
I'm
okay, okay.
traveling, yeah, so I'm traveling 6 hours to do a
okay.
show when there's literally a show that same weekend, like in my town. But I wanted to get in front of a pro level
Pro,
judge
yeah.
because like I want the
They're the one that
feedback. Like
give you
that's what
the
I'm
thumbs
doing
up,
it.
yeah.
Well,
100%.
we had Steve Weinberger at judging us at UGP. That was an experience. He
Oh, I'm sure.
yeah, I mean it was like, by the way, we're actually gonna have Nikki on in a couple weeks from our the head judge at Lehigh.
Oh, cool. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. But like, yeah, I mean, and we had Steve Weinberger, and he works you. Like he makes you. You might not have a lot of water in you, but you're still gonna sweat. Like he
Wet,
really puts it.
yes.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I don't know if you were in, no, you weren't in my class. At the Lehigh, one of my buddies, who's in that picture, he was recording. We were doing comparisons in my class for 7 minutes.
That's wild.
That's a
Seven,
lot.
yeah, and people don't realize 7 minutes, like
It
I was
sounds
like,
not
thank
like a
God
long time.
yeah, I was sore for the next week.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so I'm doing the DC Pro Am and then 2 weeks later doing junior nationals.
Is that the
So
one? That's the one Tennessee or
yeah, Chattanooga. And then
Chattanooga?
I really wanted to do Universe, but it literally landed on Easton's first birthday. So I was like,
Oh
I'm
wow,
not,
no.
You
yeah, I
can't
was like,
miss
I'm
that.
not doing that. No.
Chris is doing Universe.
Yeah,
Oh,
God
nice.
willing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm
you
I'm
know,
jealous. That was
yeah.
like the one show I like really, really, really wanted to do, but I was like, yeah.
It's cool,
And
man, but
and now the
it's
men's physique, I mean, I don't know if you remember last year, Alex, that I think G competed on Friday or Saturday. The
and
men's
they're
physique
pushing it
is,
up.
yeah, to Thursday.
Well,
So
'cause
that's interesting.
now they have Fit Model, which you know, now they have seven divisions for women. I really think they need a fit model for men because put it this way, you have classic guys winning MPN Classic at the same show.
Yeah.
Imagine if you had a figure competitor winning bikini at the same show.
Yeah,
Like
look at the winners, some of the winners at junior nationals last year. I think like three of them were crossover guys. I think the
I
overall winner, the class D and E, because those were my height classes, like they were classic guys. But yeah, it's funny. Like I think I think Universe this year is a Friday. I think it's like on the third, and then Saturday is the fourth. And the third is my birthday, and the fourth is Easton's birthday.
wow.
So yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
but
Universe is cool. I would say it's a bit of a shit show. I just of all shows, I would say they run really late. Like I think they were getting pro cards at like 10 o'clock at night or something. So
well,
it's tough. But
you saw what Junior Nationals is doing, right? They have
what are
a men's physique pro show that same night. So if you get your pro
Wow.
card,
You
yeah.
could
So
hop
if
on
you,
stage.
what's it called
yeah,
now? What's that pro show called?
it's a new show. I think it's sponsored by Manifest, where like Alex Toplin's um
Man,
Okay.
that's
competition
smart.
wear company. Yeah,
That's
so I
smart.
it I he so he's on the banner. So is um Aaron Banks, and so is that dude that won. He won his pro card at Junior Nationals last year. I forget his name, but he's coached by that. Do you guys know like Callum Rainstruck? He's
Sounds familiar.
pro coach out of the UK. He's super, super big coach. But yeah, so I was curious because there's no precedent to how this works because there's a weight cap for men's physique, right? So if you get your pro card at that show, like
Oh yeah.
you gotta
You got
weigh in.
cut. Yeah, you got to make sure you're under that weight cap.
Yeah, so which
Filled out because that's different. People are gonna weigh
Yeah.
themselves pre
Wait, so
carbs.
so do they would they just weigh the amateurs since they already have their weight?
So yeah, so I like was asking a bunch of people, and then finally I caught Sandy on Instagram Live. So she basically said that like if you anticipate, it's like who's not gonna like weigh themselves in with the pros, but if
Right.
you anticipate getting your card and wanting to do that show, then you're gonna weigh in with the pros, I believe, Thursday night.
That
So
makes sense.
yeah, but then the show is the next day. So like you're you're having to weigh in and then the next day you got to be filled out. So like, if
Right.
you're right at that weight cap, like you're not going to have much time to fill out if you need to,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
it'll still be cool. It's cool
Yeah.
experience, but
Yeah. No, I'm looking forward for you. I mean, I think Texas, from what I've seen, is by far the hardest national show. I thought last year's was I was watching it. I just almost couldn't believe it. I mean,
you're talking about
especially
the last show of the year,
what is it, December?
USA's
It was
or
just
it's
no, the one in Texas that used to be in
nationals. Yeah,
Miami.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I
It's
think a lot of guys are trying to time out shows now. Like the year before that, it was not super competitive because, during the year everyone's getting their pro card at NPC, like, USA's, North
Universe. Yeah.
Americans, Universe. So by that time it's like, you kind of have like the people that are left over. So I think some people like timed out last year to say, okay, I'm just going to do the show where you can get top two in the class. And most of the people earlier that season have already gotten their pro cards.
right.
Where I think last year, too many people tried timing it out and then it became like a super competitive show, right?
Yeah.
So it just depends. Like I said, you never know who's going to show up. It's just,
You never know anyway. I mean, I know
yeah,
I think G's probably gonna do the Caribbean. That's one of those shows you have to win the overall to get your card, but there's just fewer competitors. So and it's
yeah,
about a 40-minute flight to the Bahamas. So
it's a cool
yeah,
experience.
it's just I know some people like my old teammate Nick, he's always done Universe. He's just it's like he's now it's almost like a vendetta. He wants to get his card at Universe. So
Yeah.
it's no, it's a cool show for sure. And but I foresee you getting your card pretty soon. It's hard to say. I know
Dude,
it's
I don't
just
know.
it's such a
These guys
competitive
are
sport
just a lot
now.
of
It's
size.
yeah, like even when we were at Lehigh, just nationals at that time compared to nationals now, or even regionals now, right? Like you see some people at regionals that crazy. I mean, you're talking about how much of an improvement you've made since your first show, right? And you didn't even win the overall with those improvements. So that says it all
Yeah.
right there. My friend Adam, who he if he had only done those two Florida shows, only one of them would have had him as an NQ, as a national qualified athlete. So
Yeah.
it's hard. Like Chris has always been very supportive of me and just like confident and positive, but then I kind of push back and I'm like, Chris, man, like I could come up looking lights out, but you never know who's going to show up. So it's really just focus on their
But
improvements,
yeah, you
and
can't
that's
focus on that because
yeah.
you drive yourself into
Yeah.
this like,
Well, oh my God, like
self-doubt.
if I
Yeah.
stood this year, if I stood against myself at Lehigh, it would be like
Yeah.
crazy,
Yeah.
like nuts. So, and same with you, like it's just like the night and day.
Yeah, I think the crazy thing is just seeing how much the sport has evolved. Like, I'm a big fan of like the old school, like Ryan Terry, what's his name, Cook, like
Steve Cook.
Yeah,
Steve
Steve Cook.
Cook. Yeah, like the aesthetics part of it. Not saying
How,
that,
dude, but
the
dude, his back.
yeah, it's nuts. But when I saw him in person at the UK, like I love that GIF that's on his comments.
Yeah. Well,
He
he's
just
not
looked like a
that.
nor
His arms are not that big. That's probably why.
right, but that's where I'm getting at with this is like you got to be like pretty big now to be like competitive, and it's like at what point do I care enough to get a pro
Like,
card to not like look aesthetic,
look at
like you
this.
get to a certain
So this is our buddy Brandon, right? And he's
his
standing
arms are
next
huge.
to.
He looks
I
like
mean,
a bodybuilder.
well, so he right now he still has 14 pounds to drop to get to his So he's been having a
Yeah.
really tough prep. Like it's definitely driving, because his body
Yeah,
wants to be
that weight
big.
cap.
His body, I mean, he wants to just grow. But he looks
Yeah.
great. He's still, I think, still can fit physique. He's still got a great shape. It's just his arms are really big, and
Yeah.
he's gonna have a choice to make. But I know he wants to stay in. He has no plans of classic just yet. But he was telling me about how when he was saying it to Ryan Terry, it was just like kind of a mind fuck a little bit. But
See, and I like that. Like I said, I'm working towards a pro card, but if it gets to a point where like I gotta, put on like too much size where I don't like the way that I look in the off season, then like I don't
yeah.
know,
But I
like
mean, I feel like
you
you're meant for physique though. Like it looks like
oh,
you,
100%.
yeah, yeah. Um, but it's, yeah, I think it's gonna be interesting. Classics actually be very competitive this year with C-Bum gone. There's actually like 8 guys that could really win. So I'm actually, it's
Yeah.
in general, I'm excited for this season. I think it's gonna be fun regardless. You have a lot of names doing their last run at MP before they move on, and there's
Yeah.
like a lot of storylines to follow. Um, I do wish that they would implement a fit model for guys sooner than later. Although by the time they have it, I'll be too big for it. So you like we're just.
I wish they did weight caps at the national level for MP.
I feel they should just do it everywhere then, right? Like if they're gonna do it now,
Have a
they should just
standard.
I
like
mean, I don't necessarily see people like being over their weight cap at the regional level, but like
Nationals
I
is
know,
cutting it.
yeah, last year there was a few guys that I watched. I forget this guy's name, but he was doing several shows trying to get his pro card, and he was just too big. And I think he was my height, and he might have been like 15 pounds over his weight cap, like shredded. And I'm like, you get your pro card, and what do you do then?
You got
You
cut
stop
muscle.
working
well, because
out? Yeah.
I think G will have like 6 to 8 pounds to grow. Um, because he was on stage at like 185 and he's class
How tall is
8.
he?
He's my height, 5'8". So
5'8".
Oh, okay.
I
we're
think the
all
weight
same
cap is like 187.
87 or something. Like
Yeah, my
Yeah.
weight cap's like 202, I think.
and I think he sorry, he was on stage at more like 180, I think.
180. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So he'll have about 7 pounds. Um, but he has a very bubbly physique. It's like a very Brazilian
Yeah, yeah,
full
yeah.
like his
His arms
shape
are
is
huge.
Let's bring him up.
yeah, I was gonna say he had his leg injury. So the interesting thing is that his legs actually kind of atrophied a lot. So the careful thing is, I know he's building his legs back up, but like, he's a pretty big dude.
He reminds
Especially
me of this guy I really, really like. I don't follow him. He's a guy out of Thailand or maybe the Philippines. Isaiah.
yeah.
Um,
So
yeah,
he
very
had some gut
shapper.
issues before the show, so he knew it was gonna be tough to get like in his condition. But like once he brings the conditioning he had when he won the overall with us, like
Yeah,
he's gonna be a problem. And I think he yeah, he'll get there. I mean, he'll I think he's gonna get his card this year. But again, there's just so many competitors now. It's really hard to know when it's gonna happen.
yeah. That's
But
why I like doing before and
yeah,
after.
yeah.
Um, because like there's a lot of guys that miss out on their pro card that have made crazy transformations. I
So
mean,
he was telling me when he went to Texas, his leg was really, really bothering him. So he basically couldn't, do anything. And he got actually really big. And so it'll be interesting how he balances his weight, now that his leg is feeling a lot better. He just had another surgery. Um,
yeah,
but it is tough. And I just feel like all the shorter guys are really struggling with this weight cap. Like you hear about Brandon Cantaloupes or Drew would always talk about it. Anyone that's like 5'10" or under seems to
yeah,
basically be right there. Like Ryan Terry's as cap, Ali's pretty
yeah.
much there. Then you hear like Banks, Toplin, and like Ben Quill talking, and they're like, yeah, I got like 10, 16 pounds to go.
Yeah,
And it's like,
but
wow, like, oh my God. Like,
well, the thing is like it's a lot harder for them to put on more muscle density than it is for
but they still
someone my
have,
height.
more of a
No,
cap.
yeah.
Yeah.
But
So
that's what I like about men's physique is like there's an aesthetic look to it, right? So like
sure. I'm wondering if they might have to adjust the weight cap at some point.
Yeah.
I don't know if they
I don't know.
will.
I feel like my height, like I'm in that like sweet spot where
What
I
were
feel
you on
like
stage? What were you on stage last time?
oh, 185. And
Yeah,
then I'm I don't know where I'll be this year. I think I'll probably be filled out maybe 190. Um
bro,
I'll actually
I got up to 210 this off season. That was great.
nice.
It wasn't nice. Didn't feel nice, I can tell you that much.
So
That's a proper bulk.
Yeah. So
yeah,
I'm like 192 right now.
so I have all my pictures. I don't know if it'll pop up, but in this spreadsheet, I have them linked so that I can just quickly compare like front and back.
Dude,
But
his spreadsheet is just incredible. This is,
No, it is pretty amazing.
yeah.
let's see. Can I share? I'm a Teams guy, so yeah.
Uh
So I'm fasted like
so
193.
you're probably sharing. Oh, there you are. Okay. So
Yeah,
that's your last
it's
check-in?
one. Yeah, I'm com like 193, like flat. Like I had not had a refeed in like weeks. And then
This is where people that don't know anything about the sport have no idea how big of a difference food can make. And I think back to like
yeah,
even college days, like sometimes you drink, right? You drink alcohol the next morning, you're like, oh damn, I look kind of shredded. And then it like builds up with water retention and fat, whatever. So
yeah. So
it's
I still got probably 5 to 6 pounds of muscle or fat to lose. Hopefully not muscle.
not muscle.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
not muscle.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
no.
I'll be way under on the weight cap by at least 8 pounds.
Do you have any photos recently of you filled out?
No. Here.
You have good lat insertions.
Oh,
It's gonna be great.
let's see.
It's gonna be crazy when you carve up.
No, I mean I don't my carbs up aren't like that crazy right now.
Yeah.
Where is it?
Are you sharing just one tab or are you sharing a window? Oh, there you go.
Yeah, so not anything crazy.
What do you weigh here?
Uh, let's see, 195.
195.
So yeah,
Yeah, you'll probably be around 188 on stage.
yeah.
190.
My goal this time is just to be shredded. Like I said, um I've had a lot.
If you bring the conditioning you had at Lehigh with the new mass you have, I think you'll be good.
Yeah,
Um, But
but
it's all process, and that's why I always tell people, especially people doing their first show, I'm like, don't just think about it as the one show. Think about it as like a season, or like
for
even if you're picking
sure.
out two or three shows in a year, like focus on it as a whole and not so much as like kind of like if it's like a hockey Stanley Cup game, right? And you have best of seven, like don't get so caught up if you don't nail it the first show, use that data going to your next show better.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's yeah, and again, there's a reason why they call it a peak, right? Like
Exactly.
you look that way for a couple of hours and then back to the drawing board.
I'm bummed that they're not really doing the English show, the UK show anymore. Um,
Yeah, it was a
because
cool
I
show.
will like to do it, but listen, man, dude, it's been an absolute blast catching up with
Yeah,
you.
I honestly this was great because like I'm really short on food and so this space my eating window, so I get to have 2 meals
Oh,
now.
nice. My bad.
Yeah, me too. Me too. That's what I'm about to do right now.
Yeah. But listen, man, I'm always gonna be supporting you, and I feel
Likewise.
so fortunate that I met both of you at shows. I mean, it's such a weird sport, right? People you compete against become your friends, but I'm excited for the season for you, and we're gonna want you back in the future just to catch up
100%.
and hear about the progress you've made
Yeah,
and what
thanks
you're doing.
for having me on. Yeah, this
And I appreciate the feedback, by
this
the way,
was
because like
fun.
it's not podcasting isn't easy, right? And we're learning as we go. So
Yeah, and I'm not an expert. I was just like,
yeah,
I like this format. Kind of
it's
bounced around, touched on a bunch of different things. So
if you have the
it
right
was,
people, it's pretty easy, because
yeah,
that's why being careful with scripted, I do want it to be conversational, but at the same time, you may get guests that need a little more prodding or whatever. But with you, it's easy. We're just going to talk about whatever
It's
comes
yeah,
to
definitely
mind.
different. This
Yeah,
was probably the most, I mean, for me, I felt like the most like I gained a lot of insight
fluid.
on, yeah, and not only just fluid, because I we did have a better structure for this show after your feedback as far as questions and all that stuff, and that's something, we'll get better with as time for time. But man, you taught me a lot in such a little time,
yeah,
man. I appreciate that. Thank you.
I I
yeah.
appreciate you guys having me. Yeah,
We might,
this is my first podcast, so
we might have to get
Of many, of many.
we might have to get Vittoria on at some point and get our first ever husband and wife duo as
oh
guests.
God.
No, because I know she works really hard at her business and it's
Yeah.
pretty fun to watch. So, or maybe we have you back on together or something. And because I know she mentioned something about like, hey, like if I come back, it would be for fit model. And um,
Yeah, she definitely like is in like mom mode now and
oh,
but
sure.
I know she wants to do it again. So she was hyped about the fit model thing. So I think she'd do
All
good
right, by
at
the way,
whatever she
before
decides
I
to
let you
do.
go, did you guys move it again? Did you guys move to another house? Did I see that
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
You guys
yeah.
can't stay put.
Yeah.
But you stayed in Wilmington, right?
Wilmington, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool.
I just I normally, I don't know if you guys caught that earlier. I had we live like right on the river, so I had all the sun just like blasting
Yeah.
in
Blaring.
my face. Yeah, but
Yeah.
it's cool because literally we're right on the river, so like every night we just go for a walk and there's a sunset and
And
it's
I'm
just
I'm gonna have to come out and visit you at some point for
dude,
sure.
Wilmington's a hidden gem. It really is.
Yeah. Well, and I know you like to bounce around like try different gyms, but if you ever come down to Lauderdale, you're gonna have to come to our gym
Fitness
in
system.
Sunrise. Yeah.
What is it called?
Fitness
Fitness
System. It's
system.
it's started by
Okay.
John De La Rosa owns that one. He's an Olympian and the nicest people ever. Like it's a lot of pros, a lot of amateurs, and there's everyone's super supportive. So I know you're a big fan of like me trying out new gyms. I almost look at it as like my friends when they talk about their golf trips and they go to different golf clubs. Like for me, going to Vegas
Yeah.
and going to Dragon's Lair and testing them all out is like part of the thing. So next time you're ever down in South Florida, please let us know.
Yeah,
And
I
we'll
got
test.
like five gym memberships here in Wilmington, so I like to bounce around. I get
Okay.
bored.
I feel you, man.
We were gonna train in Miami when you were down for that bachelor party. We just didn't make it work, but
Yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah.
all good. All right,
But all
brother.
right, I
Yeah.
gotta get
Go eat
back to the
your
baby.
go eat your meals. Go have fun with the fam. But I appreciate you and your time, man. That was a good time.
All right,
Appreciate you,
thanks,
brother.
guys.
We'll
Have a
All
good
right,
talk.
man.
one. Bye.